and gentlemen, tonight we're going to be talking about king mackerel fishing. By the way, my name is Tim Broom. I'm Vice President of Half Hitch Tackle. And along with me tonight is Captain Mark Holtz. He runs 30-day guide service and was our 2020 Charter Boat Captain of the Year for the 25 and under charter division. Did really pretty work last year. What? If I remember right, first and second Mingo, first and second Scamp, first place Amberjack, first place Almaco, and first place Sheephead.
How could you forget that one?
God. But anyway, that's pretty good year, What, 4 first place, 5 first place, and 3 seconds?
I had some pretty good help on the boat.
But pretty good year anyway.
We had a pretty good team.
So, anyway, king mackerel fishing. When did the king mackerel get here? When did they leave?
And I'm a 67-degree water person. That's always the way I thought of it. Mm-hmm. Springtime, kings. I think Kobe and King show up similar times, and I'm still waiting for the king. You could probably talk about that a little better than me.
So I agree on that 67, 68 degree water temperature. That's kind of the magic number. And if any of y'all, if you don't use the service, you should. 2 inexpensive services that you can use. There's Rip Charts and Hilton's Offshore. Both of them give satellite imagery. They have water temperature, water clarity, salinity, altimetry, all the things you need to know to where the right temperature gradient is and the right water clarity is to catch whether it's king mackerel, wahoos, dolphins, tunas, and both of them are about $200 a year service. If you go, I'll use wahoo fishing for an example because we don't go this far for kings, but you go wahoo, dolphin, and tuna fishing one time, run 50 miles, miss the bite by 5 miles, well, you just burnt way more than $200 worth of fuel and didn't catch anything. Those services are invaluable. And then like this spring, if you're going to go out there king mackerel fishing, same thing. You'll be able to see where the pockets of warmer water are and know which direction you need to go on a daily basis. But yeah, the king mackerel, they showed up. They caught some, I guess it was a week ago Monday. And then we had a little bit of weather and they caught 1 or 2. And then yesterday kind of busted loose. One of our charter boats, the Always Tight, they had 18 fish yesterday, all over 20 pounds. And what was the boat today that I saw? I actually have pictures on my phone. Oh, the Malia Ann. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Looks like they had 11 and probably had 1 that's over 30 pounds. So the king and the Okaloosa Island Pier also caught their first one yesterday.
Oh, yesterday?
Yeah. So, and talking about bait.
But before that, they had hooked a couple and lost.
Yeah. Those hooked a couple and lost. Well, I don't like those fish. I've been on our pier before, especially during cobia season, and I've been out there for 5 or 6 hours, and the end of the day comes, and you walk down the tackle shop, man, they saw 4 cobias today, and I'm like, wait a minute, I've been on the pier all day. I ain't seen no cobias. I've seen a grouper swimming down the bar, a tarpon swimming down the bar, a sturgeon, and a whatever. But, so when it's got a gap in it and it's laying on the deck, okay, I believe you now. Cool story though, if y'all didn't see it yesterday on Facebook. I don't know if I sent you the picture or not. One of our local inshore guides, he does inshore, nearshore fishing, Nikki Harvell. They were cobia fishing yesterday and just happened up, and here comes this 453-pound mako, swims right up beside the boat and eats about a 200-pound tarpon. It's just sitting there eating it. And the tarpon's really not supposed, we see them this time of year, but we don't really catch them. They don't feed when it's this cold. Well, they weren't going to try to catch it, but it just kept staying there beside the boat. So finally they hook the piece, they get the tarpon away from the mako, get a piece of it, put it on a rod, throw it back out there, hook and catch the mako. Well, he's in a 24 or 21 Everglades, about the size of this one. Well, there's no way they're putting a 400-pound mako in there, so they called another friend of ours, customer Royce Danke, and Royce goes out there and gaffs it and gets it in his boat, and they bring it back home. But so the makos are here, cobias are here, fishing's great. Tell me about bait rigs.
I'm just going to hand these out. I'm going to pass these over. Bait rigs are about as easy to use as any type of fishing, I think.
Yep.
When we get over to our fads, I mean, we literally just drop those things down, and I think you don't do much at all with them.
I don't. As we're passing the bait rigs around, I want you to look at those. There's one that's going to be called a tsunami rig, I think, and the other one is a Hayabusa rig. That tsunami rig is $1.29, and that Hayabusa rig is $3.49. You can pull up out there in the morning when all the boats are out there on the bar catching bait. That Hayabusa rig is $3 for a reason. You're sitting over here and you're struggling away and you can't hardly catch them, and the boat over here is just catching them 5 or 6 at a time. It makes a difference.
It really does.
And it's funny when you look at, I'll put the Destin boats and the Orange Beach boats, our charter guys and our big time tournament guys, and this is not bragging, this is just fact. I'll take our guys, we'll go anywhere in the world, fish on your turf, and kick your rear end. Because we have such a competitive fishery here. We have the largest charter boat fleet in the world. We got more charter boats than Miami and Lauderdale combined. And if you're not fishing the best stuff and have the best knowledge, you don't have a chance to, being a charter boat, you're not going to survive here. So the little Hayabusa bait rig does make a difference.
And I'm not trying to toot your horn or anything, but when I'm standing on one side of the boat with my case of them that I bought from a different shop for a cheap price, and I'm pulling up maybe one at a time, and he's pulling up full stringers of cigar minnows, and I just want to be clear that Tim also counted every single fish that he got and kept reminding me how many more he had than me. I'd rather pay $2 extra so I don't have to listen to that.
And real important, we want to buy the better rig, but we want to make the rig last. Get a heavy enough lead. I see people go out here all the time. They got like a 1 ounce lead. Get at least 1.5 ounces and maybe up at least 1.5 ounces to 2 ounce lead. What happens is you got that string of bait fish, and if the lead's not heavy enough, they start to flip and they kick that lead up in the air, and then this hook catches here onto this hook, and all the little fish are in a little ball like this. You can just take that $3 bait rig and throw it over the side because it's ruined. Having a big enough lead.
Do you have any, what do you do when you get them up to the side of the boat? Like, what's the best way that you found to grab? I mean, what I like to grab once the rig comes up, or when customers on my boat, when it comes up, I like to grab the lead and keep the sabiki rig pretty horizontal so the fish dangle down. If you kind of hold it vertically and let one of those fish hang down, I feel like it gets tangled up really easily.
You are very correct. And let's just talk about something else for a minute while I put a bait rig on.
So I like to hold them horizontally. No, I really think it matters a lot, because I mean, I'm sure you guys have all used a sabiki rig before. As soon as you get it to the boat, there's hooks flopping everywhere. A hook will go in Kayla's hair. Things just get really wild. It's amazing to just kind of grab the weight and keep them this way. And I think bait dies a lot quicker and things get a lot weirder the more you handle them. Like sometimes if we're pulling up full stringers and there's 4 people on the boat and we're going through bait real fast, I like to try to flip them off into the live well real fast. But you know what it's like when there's boat weight coming by and there's a 60-foot Viking blasting through. You're kind of grabbing fish and throwing them on the deck, and there's fish everywhere and all this stuff. those are the fish that I find are going to be floating in the live well. And you know as good as, you give me a hand with that, with your thumb?
Yeah, we're going to get there.
You know as good as I do that a dead 3-inch long cigar minnow is not going to catch nearly the same fish that one of those really frisky wild ones will. Like, I always like to reach for those in the live well. The crazier the fish, the better the bite.
And I don't know if I can open the snaps. There we go. It came open real easy. So, on your bait rig is packaged really nice. So if you'll just tie it on, put a weight on it, and then
Yeah,
I see a lot of
don't
people
pull the whole rig straight out of the back.
just being one-handed is a disaster. So, we got a little bait rig. One thing is, I see people, they jig this way too fast. We're not jigging for Spanish mackerel. If the bait are on the bottom, drop the lead to the bottom, all you gotta do, the bait doesn't even have to, you're just gonna bounce. And when you get one, bounce a little lighter. But just keep bouncing. Then you get two. Then you'll get three. If you get the first one, just reel up. We catch them one at a time. If you'll sit there, once you get one on, just keep bouncing it. Just light bounces. Boop, boop, boop. That's all you got to do. Then, when you get ready to bring it up, and you got the little fish hanging on there, swing it to you, grab the lead, and hold it like this. All the little fish are like this. Then Mark can grab the little bait dehooker, and I can just hold the rod, and he just goes by and just flip, 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 flip.
Off. If you guys don't have one of these, I mean, I'm sure if you've used a sabiki rig, you've probably got that sabiki hook in your finger before. I don't want to tell you how many hooks I get in my hand in a season. The small ones and the big ones, especially for snapper and trigger. Today, I can't tell you how many trigger fish we went through. And every single time I use one of these, people are like, hey, that's pretty cool. How do you, trust me, it'll save your hands after a while. Tim, do you ever tip those with anything?
So for cigar minnows, herring, the normal bait fish that we're catching around the pass and off the fads, I don't tip them with anything. The Hayabusa bait rig, the better one of the two that's going around, the little stuff on the hooks on that one are true fish skin. The little $1.29 one, they're plastic. They look like fish skin, but they're not. That's one of the things that makes them work better. Now, if we want to go bottom fishing for groupers or snappers or whatever, and we need to catch some ruby lips or little mingos or whatever little fish off one of the inshore wrecks, pinfish, then I'll tip it with either a piece of fish bite, a piece of fish gum, or some little squid. If you're not familiar with fish bites and fish gum, you need to familiarize yourself with it. It was originally designed for surf fishing for pompanos. It is way better bait for triggerfish than squid is. I mean, it stays on the hook good.
It'll last a lot longer.
But if you're not familiar with it, you need to come by and look at it tonight. Come by and let the guys at the shop tell you about it. I have charter boats that don't fish with squid anymore. They only fish with fish bites. But bait is, like I say, getting bait is the most important part of your day. We're going to talk about some lures that work great for king mackerel. Early in the year like this, they're not going to be quite as aggressive. You're going to have live baits. And there's not a lot of bait around. It's not like it is in a month from now. Going out and catching bait won't be that hard, but right now it's going to take you a little while. And they're not going to be on the top trickling like they are in the summertime. They're probably going to be more down on the bottom. So you're going to want to go out there at the pass and go up and down the lip of the bar, looking on your graph, go around the red can, the green can, go out and look at the sea buoy. If they're not there, run down to the Miss Louise. If you haven't found them, there's like 6 snorkel reefs in either direction that are 300 yards off the beach. They're on the county website. You can get the numbers for them real easy. Those snorkel reefs hold a lot of bait. During the summertime, that's one of my go-to bait places.
Just as a fun fact, and I don't really want to say this, but I am, that Okaloosa County website has a lot of information on it.
Yeah.
A lot of spots.
You know, and as far, and like I say, we can't find our TV, so my little slideshow is not very good tonight. But as far as the baits that you're really looking for, a regular herring is my favorite bait, and I don't care what it is we're fishing for. Herring's number one. Then cigar minnows. Cigar minnows do live better than herring, but herring are better bait. But in the order that I like is herring, cigar minnows, threadfin herring, and then hardtails. What order would you put them in the same or
I think
different?
those herrings are definitely one of those fish too that the more you play with them, the less amount of time they last.
Right.
I mean, you can look at, especially those threadfins, when you pick one up, you'll have scales all over your hand. So you know that's not good for the fish.
Yeah. Threadfins all the herring are very delicate. You need to handle them as little as possible, and that's why the little bait dehookers work good. I know the bait dehookers are a little bit of a pain in a small boat until you get used to doing it, but when we're going fun fishing, I don't think it really matters. But if we're going to go fish in a tournament, I get bait from the bait guys out there, Mike and Steve, all the time because it's quick and easy. I can pull up, hand them $40, and we're off to go fishing. But in the summertime, there can be a line of boats, 30 boats deep. They can run out of bait. If it was like last year, bait was hard to catch. But if it's true tournament time and you're buying bait from the bait boat, well, I've already got you beat. Because if it's a tournament, I'm going to spend whatever time it takes to catch bait, because caught bait is better than netted bait for the reason you just said. When they throw that cast net on them herring especially, well, it knocks off half their scales. They're not going to live. Those ones that you buy aren't going to live as good and be as lively as the ones that you catch, for that very reason that you said. So, let's talk about tackle for a little bit. You know, if you said, what's the optimal tackle for king mackerel? Well, this is kind of the rig that most of my tournament guys would fish with. Either Shimano TLD 15 or Shimano TLD 25 with like 30-pound mono. And more importantly, the TLD has a really slow drag curve. It doesn't have a lot of drag, but it has a real slow drag curve. King mackerel have a very soft mouth. But look how limber. This rod is specifically designed for kings. Will it work for other fish? Yes, but it has a really, really light tip on it. That really light tip in a reel that has a really light and smooth drag so you don't pull hooks out. This is typical tournament king mackerel tackle.
I fish a little differently. My company is called 38 Light Tackle. I like to catch fish on the smallest gear that I can, which Tim and I kind of go back and forth about this sometimes.
I'm fine if we're fun fishing, but when we're fishing in the rodeo.
But for the most part, I mean, let's be honest. Like if we're tournament fishing, or if you guys are tournament fishing, like you probably have a good grasp on king mackerel fishing. You're probably going to be trolling a bait that's this big around. You're probably going to be offshore somewhere on a fad you put out. But for me, every day, my day in, day out fishing, the kind of fishing that I would want to do on a weekend if I wasn't at work at my old job or something like that, I want to fight fish. I want to get to know that fish. I want to have fun. I want to be slightly scared of my reel spinning so fast that I'm like, should I pour water on this? What do I need to do here?
Or we're in 300 feet of water and it's like, I'm out of line, but I'm not at the bottom yet.
Well, if you have to fight fish off your backing, it's twice as exciting. But no, I like to fish super light gear. So for me, on my king stuff, as we've kind of evolved as fishermen, we've gone a little bit heavier just from the amount of fish that we've lost. I grew up fishing on the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland, where we would troll planer boards on weed whacker lines off the T-top with 24 or 12 lines on it. Just a massive spread of fish. And you know, I mean, if you've been trolling before, when you hook into a big fish on conventional tackle with that many lines out, you can't take the boat out of gear. You kind of end up off the back, just kind of winching that fish and pulling it in like you see on some of those TV shows where they're catching wahoo and stuff like that. Like, it's fun and you will catch fish, and it's probably the right way that most of the tournament guys do it. But for me, there's something to be said about, hey, fishing's supposed to be fun. So yeah, there's tournaments, there's doing all that stuff, but at the end of the day, like, my goal on the boat anyway is to want to go fishing again. And if I've got, I'm a Shimano guy, I like to use Saragosas and Stradics. If I have a 6,000 size Saragosa on a pretty light rod here, with my drag set real light, and that thing just starts screaming, I like to take that boat out of gear, take the rod out of the rod holder, tighten the drag a little bit, let that guy fight that fish, let him walk him around the boat, let him make those runs, let him come back, and just enjoy that fish. Because I think, I mean, you know what I'm talking about. It's supposed to be fun.
Well, literally, we were talking back there earlier. We were out there catching bait one day last year, and it was, I don't know, like you said, August, something like that. We're sitting out there on one of our spots catching bait. Well, Kayla has got a rod about the size of what we got here is a bait rod. This is a Shimano 3000, but I think what she was catching them on was a 4000.
Yep, we had 4s.
And throwing small spoons off to the side of where we're catching bait. And she caught 4 or 5 king mackerel on a Stradic 4000 while we caught bait.
One thing, fishing on light tackle is a lot different. One thing I will say, those kings, they'll take a huge initial run. When we're trolling for them, they'll take a big run. Once they really know they're hooked, once they're kind of getting a little tired, they'll turn and they'll swim right at the boat. And everybody who gets on my boat, they'll be like, oh, I lost it. I'm like, please, just keep reeling, please, and hold on to the rod. And they'll be like, nah, he's off, he's gone. And then all of a sudden that fish will see the boat and he'll just take off again. And we had one of my best friends who's all of 6'5", 250, full ride to college for, almost went through the Olympics, standing right here on the back of my boat, and he's like, nah, he's off. I'm like, just don't let go of my rod. And that fish hit, and he ended up with his hand about right here, holding that rod out, letting him run. We got that fish, and we got it to the boat. It was all, 20 pounds, something? You remember that? It's just a lot. It's fun. You can't tell.
And normally, the king mackerel fishing for the most part around here is easy enough that if we want to fish like tackle and just have fun doing it, I think what do we need? You keep 3 per person, but gosh, we got 4 people on the boat. I'm not going to keep 12 anyway. So if we lose 4 or 5, I don't really care if we're having a good time catching them and hooking them.
It still hurts to lose them, though.
It does. As far as rigs, we've talked about bait, cigar minnows and herring and different things. You can make your own rigs. Or they make these guys Sea Striker tackle. They make what's called a Carolina live bait king rig. We actually taught this company how to make these. And this is exactly how all the guys in the shop, we all make a rig the same way. It's got a small single hook on the front. That single hook is going to go right in the eye socket of the cigar minnow, and it's got a little treble hook that's trailing about 4 inches behind that. That's going to go right in the fish's back. Don't go down to where you hit his backbone. That'll kill him. Just barely prick him with it. So we sell them pre-made. It's a lot cheaper, of course, to make your own. I think the little rigs are like $4.99. So for what you would, if you bought 5 rigs, you could buy the leader material, the hooks, and everything you need, and probably make 20.
What size wire would you use if you were making your own?
Typically, I run 40-pound wire.
Is that solid or stranded?
I like the stranded wire. And if you went down the charter boat docks and got all the deckhands here together, we could put 25 over here that use braided wire and 25 over here that use straight wire. It doesn't really matter.
I think that the braided wire is just a lot easier to tie.
It is. And to me, when it gets kinky, they do make a little tool. I guess I should have brought one. It looks like a little, almost like a little hair clip, and you just hook the hook on something, run it up and down that braided leader, and you can straighten it out pretty easy. The straight wire, once it gets a kink in it, you can just throw it away. Have enough king mackerel leaders made up. Don't go fishing with 3. You know, always have Ziploc bags. Make them up beforehand. Have 24 of them. You know, talking about that, when you gaff a king mackerel, you gaff him, he goes in the fish box, you shut the lid, you cut the line or unhook the swivel, whatever it is. Don't worry about that leader. We can get that back when we fillet it. They got a mouthful of razor blades. Bad things will happen if you mess with a king mackerel. You know, any fish. Anybody who hasn't read one of my Facebook posts lately, we can talk about everything. It's not a king mackerel bite, but it is fish poisoning.
Like, I'm a pretty calm guy. That's not true.
No, you knocked me out of the boat over a sheephead.
That was a good fish.
It was a sheephead.
When we get a king,
It was a sheephead.
This is a king seminar, Tim. When we get a king close to the boat, and normally I like people fishing in a certain area on my boat because I keep my gaff on this gunnel. So where I like to pull my gaff out, gaff that fish, and throw it up front. I have a tendency to get a little aggressive when fish get close, and I may or may not scream at kids and say really bad things for them to get out of the way when we throw that fish up on the deck. Because, I mean, you guys have all seen a king. You know, if you don't know what their face looks like, I'll show you a picture on my phone. It's pretty aggressive, and the last thing I want is anybody to get near treble hooks, wire, or that king. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a really, really good point. Just throw that thing straight in the box, shut the lid, put them in the penalty box, we call it, let them calm down.
We can get the hooks back later. You know, even if he tears the leader up and you don't get it back, it's still, you know, there's always a single hook and a treble hook. And even if he doesn't bite you, if he gets one of them other hooks in you, that's $250 at the walk-in clinic to get that out.
And not that I'm speaking out of experience again, but a dead kingfish will also cut you too.
Don't stick your finger in the mouth. We're going to talk about lures too here in just a minute, but on the live bait rig that's going around, you know, early in the season, the fish are going to be a little deeper. In the middle of the season, when it's really hot, they're going to be a little bit deeper. Adding a trolling lead to that live bait, normally if I'm trolling like 4 lines, I like to have 4 different size trolling leads. I might have a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, a 6 ounce, and an 8 ounce. So I'm covering different depths of water. The trolling lead is great for taking it down a little bit deeper.
And it'll definitely help driving the boat too, because staggering your baits lengths and depths keeps you from tangling when you're making. And today we were making pretty tight turns around some of these fads at certain points. And the guys on the boat were watching the lines all cross, and they're like, "You're in trouble, but with the trolling lead on one and not on the other, you'll watch them all straighten out after a while."
It is real important, you know, when you're putting them out there. If you're going to troll 4 lines, put one on like at 50 feet, one at 75, one at 100, and one at 125 foot. So they're different levels this way, and your trolling leads are different levels this way. And like Mark said, when you turn, they'll cross up underneath them, and they'll come back. If you got 2 lines out and they're both 100 feet out, and you make a turn, they run into each other. Not good. Lure fishing. I know you're a big lure guy, right?
I mean, I'll fish with live bait when we have to, but I like using lures a lot. I like lure fishing. I like jigging for stuff. No, that's a whole another part of Kings too that today, for instance, I went out and it was Tim. I feel like Tim brought part of this up as a little shot at me this morning because I told him how my day went. We did not spend much time for bait at all. We had a live well full of really small baits that I probably wouldn't have trolled anyway. Ended up going out and getting bigger baits and things like that. But when we went king fishing, I was like, look, I like my plugs. I like doing it my way, and I'll be completely honest with you, I didn't catch king today at all. We changed our plan and ended up going out bottom fishing to do stuff. But I'm still, no matter what, when I go king fishing, I personally like to reach for plug.
Well, there's a lot of our charter boats now that almost strictly lure fish for king mackerels. The lures have gotten so good. You know, I don't think that lures produce a quality fish.
I agree with
But if you want to catch a quantity of fish, and many times they catch at least as many, if not more, when you're talking about quantity, because it's easier. You don't spend time catching bait, so you are spending actually more time fishing. So lures can be really, really good. And you know, the Yozuri lures that are out there now, and the Rapalas, did I not bring a Rapala lure?
This one here is, this pink one, and then there's another color, a rainbow colored one. For me, it's tough sometimes because on the boat, we drive a long way, and people are, I don't want to take people for a boat ride. I want to make sure we're trying to fish as much as we can. So sometimes especially if bait is tough to come by, I'm limited on time. And I'm sure you guys, you have jobs, you have stuff you have to go do, like you have families. You can't just go out on the boat all day and have somebody who doesn't care. Thanks, Kayla. Maybe you care a little bit, but thanks. I like to get out there and fish, and I agree, the biggest kings I've ever caught, live bait. Very slow trolling, just kind of in and out of gear, enough to keep that bait swimming towards the boat, really. But for me, I control these a lot faster. They'll dive deeper the faster you go, and I can cover a lot more ground. So if I'm I don't want to say blind trolling, because I always kind of have a little bit of an idea of where I want to go, but kings are they move around a lot. They're not like a stationary fish. They don't kind of hug too close to anything. So for me, sometimes I like to cover ground. So the faster I drive, the more area I can cover. I'm a big fan of this one.
Yeah, and the lures I think are great, especially for locating fish. Mark, when you go to hand that one around, tell them the difference between the one with the little lip and the one with the bigger lip on it.
It's just a matter of diving. I've never actually tried this one before. Yes, I used to use the Bomber 16A. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
It's pretty much the same thing. I find they definitely swim a lot less shallow, or a lot more shallow, I'm sorry. So for me, it's one of those things where you can throw out one way off the back, up high on the surface, just barely diving a little bit, and then that one closer to the boat that's diving a little deeper. So A, you're not getting tangled as you're covering, or as you're turning around and driving, but you cover more of the water column too.
Is that called a stretch?
The stretch, they have the stretch company is a different company altogether. Those stretch 25s and those stretch 30s, they're pretty big plugs. I like trying to, the same old cliche of matching the hatch. I like to try to get close to like what our cigar minnows look like. Or I think too, a lot of times here, even though it's not as, certain places where so fair warning, I'm not from here, I didn't grow up here. I fished almost all over the world for a while. I traveled for a living, and I learned a little bit of fishing from different states or countries or whatever. And certain places, it's huge on squid. So for me, I like going after squid-colored lures, things that look like squid, even cedar plugs, like a natural color, a wood-color cedar plug. I love things like that because I think fish like squid, like fish like eels. But eels and squid is a thing here, but not as prevalent as a lot of other places. But pink lures and plugs about the size of like a cigar minnow you'd normally see, I think the closer you can get to what they're probably actually feeding on, the better. But what do you think of those stretch? A lot of people have success with them.
They make a stretch 15, which I think is an okay lure. theirs are not nearly as lifelike as what the Yozuris and the Rapalas are today. I knew Tom Mann when I was a kid, that he's not alive anymore, but owned Mann's Lures. They really haven't changed much in about 30 years. Their technology, they're still good lures, but there's just so much better stuff on the market. So what I've rigged up here, of course I got a trolling lead on the end of here, but we're going to pretend that it's a lure. And I have in the middle a planer. Now, the planer does not work good.
Oh, uh-oh. Got a full knot. Guys, I do this all day. So just take a second.
At least you can see it in here.
All right, maybe I'll load. Tim, can we just cut this and retie it?
Yes. It's like, Kayla, fix this.
This is a good one.
While he's done doing that, the planer works, so you got the lure that's going around that has the larger lip on it. That can be run by itself or with the trolling lead. That large lip lure does not work good on the planer. It will cause enough turbulence to trip the planer a lot of the time and give you a false strike. Are you making it
This is a good one.
I think you're making it worse.
That's what it's like fishing with Tim on my boat too.
But the planers on the small lip lure, this is how the majority of our charter boats that are trolling. There's a few of them that troll trolling leads, but most of them.
Almost.
If we can ever get it untangled, we're going to show you the one. There we go. So there is one issue with a planer. On a trolling lead, we can have about a 6 foot leader on our lure. Now when we make a live bait leader, it's made out of wire. When I'm putting leaders on lures, we use 100-pound mono. The lures run much better on 100-pound mono than on wire.
Absolutely.
You will occasionally lose one, but I think it's worth it overall. But here's the problem with it. The planer actually works better than a trolling lead. Has one problem. Planer gets here, fish is still over there. So this last 20 feet, you have to hand line the fish in and then gaff it. And you want to make sure that if you're using planers, the planer needs to be here and you need to be hand lining. Don't have somebody holding this back here, because if that fish takes off, that planer will come by and hit you in the back of the head. So make sure that it's kind of right here beside you. Get a hold of the planer, then hand line the fish up, gaff him, and go in the boat. So planers can't, they do have there's a little danger level there, but as soon as you learn how to use it, when this gets up, you just got to get control of that planer, then hand line the fish in.
Speaking of lure fishing and dangers, if you're not used to trolling a plug like that, and you are done fishing for the day and you have 2 of those things out, if anybody's reeling that thing back to the boat, it's going to swim. I mean, it swims like a wounded fish. It's going to have some drag on the line. Your rod's going to be bent over. It's going to feel like you're reeling in a little fish. When that thing gets close enough to the boat, or that lip, exactly, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. When that lip comes out of the water with tension on that rod, that lure is going to shoot right back at you real fast.
Can you guys talk about trolling speed?
So for live bait, the question was trolling speeds. So live bait, it's as slow as you can possibly go, and that this minnow over here can't swim his way over here and tangle everything up. Sometimes, let's say we're trolling around the sea buoy. We go this way around the sea buoy, we're in gear. And when we come around the back side of the sea buoy and the tide's pouring in, I can almost take it out of gear and we'll go fast enough. Some people don't like going in and out of gear. If your boat idles pretty fast and you feel like it's going too fast, and you don't want to go in and out of gear all the time, tie a 5-gallon bucket off to a cleat. That'll slow you way down. As far as lure speed, somewhere in that. You kind of have to play with it. It's kind of like finding the pattern every day, 3 to 5 miles an hour. It's kind of lure speed. The lures need more speed because we have to make the lure look alive. With a live bait, he's going to do all the work for us.
And I think too, the faster you drive, the deeper that thing's going to dive.
Yeah.
I mean, more drag on that lip, it's just going to cause him to go. Do you find that if you are trolling a certain speed and you're catching only bonita, you notice a difference in speed between those two?
If it's between bonitas and king mackerel, you're going too fast.
So, and that's what I was going to say. If I'm trolling around the sea buoy or somewhere near shore, close to the pass, something like that, and my rods are going bonita, 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 if I slow down, that's typically where I'll find, because I mean, kings and bonitas in summer are all over. I mean, you know they're everywhere.
And a lot of times when you're trolling around a reef or the Liberty ship or whatever it is that you're trolling around that you mark bait, is you're trolling and kind of start to go around something, is you're making that little circle. Every once in a while, just take it out of gear and let all them baits just kind of free fall. And then when you put it back in gear and you start to go again, boom, you'll get a bite. I mean, it's that change of motion, change of whatever, that will cause you to get a bite.
Another thing too that I do a lot more often than I should, because if I am trolling, we're using light spinning gear, and I think kings, like every other fish, their eyes are on the top of their head. They have a tendency to feed upwards. They're dark back, hanging out, and they attack. If you watch TV shows, you'll see. And if you're trolling, and if it's a good king bite, and you're paying attention, and you're looking back at your baits, they'll launch out of the water. It's fun to see. Or sometimes, like, we'll just be sitting there, and a king will just launch out of the water next to it, which is awesome. I mean, I think that's half the fun of fishing. Or if you're reeling a jig too fast and that king jumps towards you, it's another story. Do you remember that day? So I think, I forgot where I was going with that. I got all excited about that fish jumping at us.
Going too fast and catching bonitas.
No, I lost it.
So anyway,
this is what I'm like on my boat too.
If you're actually catching too many bonitas with your lures, you're going too fast. You know, if you want to catch bonitas, you know, for me, when I'm going bottom fishing, we're going snapper group or amberjack, whatever it is, I want bonitas. I'm gonna take just a couple feather dusters on the way going somewhere, throw a couple dusters in, troll them, because I want bonitas. You can catch bonitas going 10 knots really easy. You won't normally catch king mackerel going 10 knots. But bonitas will run it down and catch it. Cedar plugs work great for catching bonitas. But that's one of my go-to baits for bottom fishing. So I'm never unhappy. If we go king mackerel fishing and we catch, 5 king mackerels and 20 bonitas, that's really okay, because all them bonitas are going in the cooler. They're when we get home that night, I'm gonna slab them up in the slab, salt them down, and freeze them, and have bait on the days when I can't catch bonita, because sometimes during the heat of the summer they're hard to catch, so I like having a freezer full anyway.
All right, I got it back. So when we're trolling for kings, I think eyes top of the head, they feed up, they like to air out like that. If I have a short strike, or if my drag starts screaming and nothing hits, there's nothing on it, I have a tendency where I'm driving, I'll flip open the bail and let that thing sit there for a second and maybe drop back down. And I think, there's been plenty of times where I think those fish come up and they try to handicap that bait fish. They'll bite the tail right off of it. And I watch a lot of National Geographic and things like that, so you see a lot of fish shows. They'll come up and bite the tail off, swim back around, and finish off that fish. So I think a short strike on a plug, even though they probably know that something's wrong, a lot of that instinct, that fish reaction, I'll just lean over, I'll flip open that bail, let that plug sit there for a minute, and that fish will come back around. I'll close that bail. That fish moves at all, or sometimes that fish will just grab and he's on.
It's the same thing, by almost the same token. If you're trolling around a spot, whatever kind of reef it is, you're making your loop, you got live bait or lures, just walk around the boat every once in a while and just tap the rod. because that lure is sitting there doing this, or the minnow's doing this. Well, when you tap it, it does something different. You'll walk around and just tap, 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 and about the third one you tap, it goes, because king mackerel's sitting there watching it. And then it did something different, and that's when he attacks it. Question? Yes?
Do you want to, if you're trolling with the planers, what kind of line do you want? You want to use braid and then with mono leader with the planer, or?
So really, for the main line, the question was, what kind of line should you use with a planer? The main line can be whatever. The planers create a fair amount of drag. They need to be on at least 30 pound and probably on 40 pound. They can pull hard enough to break 20, because it's your rod's going to run bent, because they create a fair amount of pressure. The line from the planer to the lure, this one here that I tied on that Mark tangled all up, I would make that piece be at least a 100-pound test, maybe even 125. It's not for its breaking strength, it's because you've got to hand line it, and it's bigger, and you need to be able to get a grip on it. If you make this little shock line on a 30-pound test, you'll cut your hands up trying to hand line that last little bit. So make it pretty heavy. Yes, sir.
What's the biggest fish you've ever caught?
Biggest fish or biggest king mackerel?
Biggest fish.
787-pound blue marlin.
Did you have to think about that, Tim?
I had to get I have said it before and got the number. I have said 870, and it's not. It's 787. They're all the same numbers, and I'll get them all dyslexic. The biggest king mackerel I've ever caught is 55. I've never caught a 60-pounder. There was a guy that used to fit. Back when I was a kid, we never trolled live baits. We never trolled lures. Back when I was a kid growing up in Destin became famous because of king mackerels. Back in the day, in the 70s, when I was a kid, when I was your age, had my first job working on a charter boat, we trolled a duster rig with a frozen cigar minnow for king mackerel. And I look back today, and we did things wrong because they were extremely plentiful at that point. We would do 4 4-hour trips a day. And we didn't count king mackerels by the each. We counted them by the handfuls. And it was like, we caught 9 handfuls on a 4-hour. That's 45 king mackerel. We did that over and over and over and over. And we had purse seiners at that time. So I can remember when the king mackerel fishing was insanity. But because of our stupidity, I can also remember in 82 and 83 when there was an entire moratorium for 2 years. Couldn't keep one. So we do want to be conservation minded. We all want to go catch fish. I want to catch a ton of fish every day. Catch enough to bring home. What you don't need, don't bring it home. You know, 3 king, if you got, the limit's 3 per person, your boat limit ought to be 1 per angler to bring home. That's plenty. I mean, it's a ton. There's some fish, there's a lot of waste on. A triggerfish, there's a lot of waste. The head is really big. You don't get that much yield from a triggerfish. From a king mackerel, you get a tremendous yield. It's almost probably 85% yield.
All muscle.
Yeah, probably 85% yield. So you don't have to keep nearly as many. I also hear people say, oh, I don't really like king mackerel. They're not very good to eat.
That's what I was going to say.
You ain't fixing them right. I'm pretty sure I put 2 recipes on the Half Hitch Facebook page yesterday, kind of leading up to this. And you can go on our Half Hitch Destin Facebook page, and there's 2 king mackerel recipes on there. One is fillet them out, cut the dark meat out, soak them for about an hour in Italian dressing, dredge them in cornstarch, then go back in the Italian dressing, and if your dry mix, have half fish fry and half Jiffy corn muffin mix, and sprinkle in some dry Italian seasoning into that and deep fry them. They're really good. And the other one is, get you just an electric skillet. You can do it on the stove. We cook fish mostly on the back porch. And this will work. This one will work for anything you catch. This is how we cook most everything. We have one of them little skillets, gets like $4.50. I put it on $4.25. A big old chunk of Kerrygold butter. Dust both sides of the fish with Old Bay and salt. I use a lot of Old Bay, so much it's orange almost. And just pan saute it in Kerrygold butter. It's good stuff. And it will work on anything.
I'm not much for eating fried stuff. I wasn't. I was working on the boat one day. We caught maybe 3 or 4 kings that we kept. I agree with Tim a lot. Like when you start filleting kings and throwing them in a bag, there's a point where you're like, what am I going to do with this much food? And most of the people I take fishing are on vacation. They're leaving on Saturday. They throw their food in the refrigerator, and I just know that when they leave, that fish probably isn't going with them. So that's hard for me to catch as many fish as we do every day, knowing that they may not make it. So I just want to throw in my 2 cents on conservation. Like, I'm all about eating fish, but I don't think king freezes very well. So we try to eat it as in 2-3 days, something like that. And I was working on my boat one day after a trip. I told Kayla that we were getting hungry. She asked what I wanted for dinner, and I eat pretty clean. And Miss South Alabama here did something to that king mackerel that she tossed me down a piece, and she was like, "Yeah, I made yours inside. Yours is for you, but try mine." And I was like, "Wait a second, I want to eat that." Her trick is to soak it in milk. I think that, like you use the Italian dressing. Mm-hmm. We've started soaking almost all of our fish in milk after we get it off the boat and cook it. And another thing that a guy named Mike Valentino, who runs Trigger Happy Fishing Charters in Destin, showed me one day, in Brayton. My trip canceled, I think, and I was just sitting on the porch, and he drove by and asked if I wanted to help him out because his deckhand was busy. I hopped on his boat. We live trolled king mackerel or cigar minnows around Bad for 4 hours. Caught a lot of really good fish, and when we went to fillet him, he started laughing at me for how I fillet a king, and the skin on them can be pretty soft. So sometimes on a big king, if you try to run that fillet knife down the side of it, and I know you laugh at me and my fillet jobs anyway, but if you try to run that knife all the way down a king, I mean, you'll cut through. I mean, I'm sure you guys have done it before. You'll cut through that skin and then end up flipping it over and trying to get that skin off. He showed me his trick. He was like, "Here's what I do." And right off the bat, he'll get that fillet off. He'll cut them into manageable sizes about this big and run down the bloodline, under the skin, down the bloodline, under the skin, and pop off those loins. Just really easy, manageable sections that made what could have been a big pain, the skin on it, just into a really easy. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That helped a lot. I've never filleted a king the long way anymore, ever since.
If you are going to pan saute any fish, there's a couple secrets in cooking, and go try it before you say, "I'll just use some butter." If you haven't, I don't care what you're eating. If you're making biscuits or pancakes or whatever you're doing, go buy a box of Kerrygold butter. It's Irish butter. It's more expensive. You'll never buy butter brand butter again, or Land O'Lakes or whatever. Also, king mackerel make excellent fish dip. One of the reasons they make excellent fish dip is because they have some oil to them. I'd always made king mackerel dip before, and then one day I decided, there's some extra cobia here. I'm gonna make fish dip out of it. We all know the cobia is great grilled. I mean, fish dip out of it is horrible. You couldn't put enough mayonnaise and sour cream in it to get it where it wasn't dry. By the time you had enough stuff in it where it wasn't dry, well, it just tasted like mayonnaise and sour cream. But if you are making fish dip, or if you're making ham sandwiches, either one, just like Kerrygold butter, Duke's mayonnaise.
Right.
It's the cheapest one out there. If it's not Duke's, you can't have it. If somebody shows up on the boat with Miracle Whip on their sandwich, I'd rather them bring bananas.
No.
If you got Miracle Whip, you're going over. So what else can we teach y'all?
Tim, I see you have something in here about downriggers. I'm guessing you can use that in lure complainer or...
Right. Downriggers are a good option. The downriggers in that really heat of the summer when we're having to fish the far edges, southwest edge, Mingo Ridge, a planer will only go about 25 feet deep. I can fish 100 feet deep for the downrigger. But most people are probably not going to downrigger fish. It's a $400 or $500 investment. If we were tournament fishing and we were doing a seminar on tournament king mackerel fishing, we would talk a lot more about downriggers. But for the normal, everyday king mackerel fishery, you should not need it to go out and catch your king mackerels. We have plenty that you don't need to have that. As far as things that are coming up, of course, we've just started catching cobias. The king mackerel showed up really good not this weekend because it was so windy, but the weekend before that, there was about 6 or 8 wahoos caught. That Sunday, one of the boats had 4 really nice dolphin, only about 35 miles from home. They're super, super blue water. It's really just right for all the offshore species, tunas, wahoos, dolphins, just 35 miles offshore. Our mayor, Gary Jarvis, caught a blue marlin today. They were coming home from bottom fishing. They were in 155 feet of water, 14 miles from home, caught a 350-pound blue marlin. I think I told y'all earlier, one of the boats caught a mako this week. Tons of pompano on the beach now.
A lot of really short trigger fish.
If you're fishing the water near shore, if you're going to go trigger fishing, trust me on this, get out there 12, 15 miles. The water on the beach is still a little bit cool. You're going to find a lot of short triggers up on the beach. You get out there in a little deeper water, 125 to 185 foot of water, the trigger fish, a lot better size out there. Yes, sir.
As far as that water temp right now, is any of the nearshore water warm enough for the kings, or are you still?
Absolutely. They caught the first one off the pier yesterday.
Right, okay.
So, yeah, the king mackerel are going to bust loose. Right now, there's just little pockets of them within a week. Looking at what we're going to have for temperature, within a week, they're just going to be scattered all up and down the beach, any direction you want to go.
You don't have to go out 10 or 15 miles.
Nope. So, I think we're going to remember for tonight, no matter what species we're going fishing for, we're going to catch enough bait. We're not leaving the pass or the general beach area until we catch enough bait. It's number one. Snapper fishing, grouper fishing, doesn't matter, king mackerel, we got to have enough of the right bait. If we're going to go trigger fish or mingo fishing, at least give fish bites and fish gum a try. It's bait that, if you're like, one is, I don't really mind fishing with squid. I hate cleaning up the mess from fishing with squid. It's messy. It gets that black ink all over the boat. It stinks like hell. I don't like messing with it.
It'll stay under your fingernails until you're talking at a seminar later that day.
Well, unless anybody's got any more questions, I think that's probably about what we got for tonight. Kayla, can you make sure that everybody gets one of these? Are you still filming?
I can film and hand out. Everybody, you'll be on the lot.
Okay.
And I think we should give out some hats.
We need to give out some hats.
What do you think?
Sure.
How about Glenn Miller?
Oh, gotta play a tune for us.
Who wouldn't like it?
And
Oh, yeah.
William Strange.
Way to go.
Here you go.
Outfit.
Masters green too.
David Mayer. And Jenny. Is there more than one Jenny? Jenny B. I'll leave it there. Is there one more? Mark Hodes. Hey, cool. I'll take
Yeah,
that.
no.
Carrie Patton. Oh,
It's looking mighty suspicious
Yeah.
that both girls on the front row. You know, Markayla is here. You keep giving hats to girls like that.
I know. He keeps all the hats,
and
Tim.
Mark wins the fish gum. Oh, how about that? I'll go grab that.
Yeah, no. Well, guys, we appreciate y'all coming tonight. Next month's seminar will be bottom fishing, first Tuesday in May. And then first Tuesday in June will be tarpon, and first Tuesday in July will be offshore trolling,
The next month is what?
bottom fishing.
If you guys need anything from me, you can send me a message on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. I'm like anyone else. I have my phone on me all the time. And I think if there's anything that Tim and I have learned, I don't know, I feel like it's just a lot easier to sometimes ask somebody, hey, any advice on this than it is to go catch the same triggerfish for 4 hours before you try something different and learn something. So if you guys need anything, just send me a message, or Tim too at Half
Yeah.
Hitch. Just let us know.
All right, guys, thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.